Hi everyone, you're watching the Google Sheets channel, and today we've got lesson 18 on Google Sheets. In this lesson we're talking about the indirect function. This function isn't always easy to understand. So we'll start with simple examples, and by the end of the video I'll show you some more complex real-life cases. So make sure to watch till the end. It's going to be interesting. Let's get started. So, how does the indirect function actually work? This function displays data from the range that we pass to it in text format. What does that mean? Let's open the function, add the parentheses, that's important. And inside, we pass some text. For example, let's type B2 and then we close it. Now whatever is in cell B2 will be displayed right here. It may look silly, but right now we're just figuring out how it works. Yes, not B1, B2, like this. So we've simply specified the name of a range in text format, and it showed us the value. Basically, this could also work just by using the equal sign. You might have noticed that too, but our function can also work in a different way. What if we reference cell B2, just like we did here, but this time inside the function? We'll get an error because that cell contains numbers, and indirect doesn't accept numeric values. However, it does accept text. So instead we can type C1, and now our formula, the one that starts simply with the equal sign, will show whatever is inside cell B2. But the indirect function itself won't show anything yet because it's referring to C1, meaning to this cell right here. If we enter some data in that cell, the result will appear here. We can also specify a wider range, for example, C1 to C100. Right now there's an error because that previous formula is interfering with it. Let's delete it. And now, no matter where we enter data, anywhere from C1 to C100, our result will be displayed. And this way, you can keep experimenting with it. Let's go a bit further so you understand how it works even better. Let's say I want to reference another sheet, for example the Work tab, and get the data from there, from C1 to C100. How could we do that? We could simply type the equal sign, then curly brackets, point to that range and press Enter. And that's it. It works. So what does the formula look like? It's work C, exclamation mark, then C:, C. We can see that, and we can also use the same thing inside the indirect function. In cell B2, we type work C, and what do we get? We see the result from the worksheet, column C. I think that's clear now. Now let me show you a more interesting example of how this can be used. For instance, here we have a list of months, and I want to collect data from each month using these columns. Let's copy the names of the months and take these three columns for summing, right here. How would we do it using regular formulas? We type the sum function, go to the needed month sheet, select the column, press Enter, and get the total for January. Then we drag it across to get the results for the other months. Let's check that, for example. 1,400, that's correct. But here we'd immediately run into a problem. For the following months you'd have to write the function again, copy it, and change the reference to the next month, and so on. It's not a big deal if there are only a few sheets, 1, 2, 3, but if there are many sheets, lots of months, and later even months, organized by years below, this becomes inconvenient. And if those sheets keep growing over time, it turns into a real problem. How can we solve this with the indirect function? Very simply. Let's first write out, just for clarity, what our reference looks like. Our reference is January C:C. That's the exact text we need. We place that text here. But because the month name is dynamic, we remove it there, then type the equal sign, then indirect, open the parenthesis, and reference this cell. Oops, sorry. We needed to add a space there to make the reference work correctly. So, we reference this cell, then add an ampersand, the symbol used to join text strings. That tells the formula that we're working with text. Next, we attach the quotation marks, which contain our column reference, C. Then we close the quotation marks above, remove the extra space we don't need, and now we've created a reference to the range we want to sum. And that's what we'll insert right here. And this way we'll get the same result. If we drag the formula down, we'll get the same thing again, but now it's fully dynamic. For example, if I change this month to March, we'll get the result from that sheet, 1215. We do the same for the other columns. And we get the result we need, dynamic, based on the month we select. If we add new months, everything will keep working. Just extend the list and drag the formula down, and INDIRECT will update the reference automatically. So now we can get all results dynamically. Let's move on to a more interesting example. Suppose we have a table like this, and these cells are empty. Based on a specific ID and month, we want to sum the data from each corresponding month sheet. Each month can have its own set of IDs, and IDs may repeat. The month and the ID can vary. What I want is the total for that month and that ID. Using the same approach we used earlier, we can write a more complex expression. I'll bring the data back and write it next to our table so you can see a clear example. What do we need? We need to specify the sum of a range, and that's exactly what we'll write. Sum with indirect. Which range do we need? We'll reference January, meaning we need it from the January sheet, and we'll point indirect to that range. Yeah, that's how it looks for now. Next, we always know which range we have to sum. It's column C on every sheet. So, we add that part of the text by joining it and simply writing C:C. Before that, we put an exclamation mark, since we're referencing a sheet. Then we close it and check what our function shows. January.gainCC. Now our target range is set correctly. Next, we just copy this function and define the criteria range, the range where we'll be searching. We're searching in column B, so we specify that here. And the third argument in the sumifs function is the criterion, the actual value we're looking for. Here, we enter our ID from this cell. If I did everything correctly, we'll get a result. Here it is. Now let's copy the formula down. You'll notice the results don't all repeat, and I did that on purpose to draw your attention. Why? Because in March we have incorrect IDs. Those IDs don't exist in this example. If we correct them here, everything will work. Accordingly, all our values are now displayed correctly. And to double check, let's add a few more entries to our range and see what happens. That's it. The data is being summed correctly. So these manually entered values are no longer needed. We can copy the formula, paste it here, and see the results for each ID in every month. Let's copy it over here and here. Now we can clearly see which results belong to which sheet. And let's do this. To include April as well, we'll take the formula, paste it here, and check how it works. And here we have our result. If we add something else here, we'll naturally get the updated total. Now, let's try one more example to reinforce what we've learned. Let's say we have another column here, and it contains the years, written like this. Now, instead of focusing on the month, I want to focus on those values, on all the sales. We have several sheets with different data, each containing these IDs, and each one has its own year specified. So we always know that this part will stay the same, but the year might change. So to get the data I need, let's remove this part for the example. Now I don't need to reference the month dynamically anymore. I need to reference the year while keeping the sheet name All Sales. Let me show you how. First, let's just write it out. we open the parentheses, make sure to pay attention to the space, and then we add an ampersand, meaning we're joining text. Then we type 2025. This way, we immediately make our reference dynamic based on the specified year. And if I drag it down now, we'll see how it changes. Meaning, we've successfully created dynamic sheet references. Now we just need to get the totals based on the ID. So, we write sumifs, then indirect, and specify the range. What exactly we want to sum. As always, we join the text parts, open the quotation marks, and type C:(C). Next comes the second argument of the sumifs function, the criteria range. We insert it and specify column B. And for the criterion itself, we enter the ID. Then we press enter. And I made a mistake. The mistake was that I forgot to add the exclamation marks here. Once we fix that, we get our result, the total sales for a specific year. If we change the year, the result updates accordingly, giving us the sum for that year. This function may seem quite complicated at first, but I hope I managed to explain the main idea behind how it works. I'm sure you'll find a way to use it in your own projects. That's all for now. Thanks to everyone who watched until the end. See you next time.